Trust, but I can tell you really want to cut right through this. Yeah, right through this. 'Cause no one knows just what to make of this ball of dust that we're living on. One thing I know is that everyone will get hurt. So before we're gone, let's do this. Let's do this before the heavens have crashed to the ground. Let's do this. Let's do this before we're silent. Let's make such a sound. Oh, let's do this.
Hello, filmmakers. Welcome to today's Blackmagic Collective, super fun times learning technology. I have three amazing guests who are really into the AI world. You have their bios. We're not going to get into that. I want to use the time we have to really jump into what AI is. Quick reminder, please put your questions and comments when you are here so that we can answer them along the way, as we will definitely answer them. And I guess let's get going. I want to start with Evan, just because he mentioned something in the pre-chat about his company and what they specialize with AI. So can you tell us about that and what exactly procedural AI is?
Sure. Hi, I'm Evan Pessis. I'm the co-founder and head of studio at Wild Capture. So we're a digital human technology studio. And what we do is we bring volumetric video, which is scanned video of actors, and bring them into VFX gaming and immersive technology. But we use AI in a different way. So there's two types of AI. There's generative AI and there's procedural AI. We use procedural AI for optimization, for pose estimation, and essentially to create much better, more lifelike versions of actual real human scanned people. And so what we're using AI for is to essentially create more lifelike humans that are better than animated characters. And what we're doing is we're focusing on ethical AI. So we're licensing actual commercial licensed AI sets from trusted partners. That's not just scraping art from the internet.
And I think that's an important discussion that we want to get into as well, especially with our producers like Mark and Jason, and to make sure that when you're using AI that it's legit, that you're paying the people whose likenesses are being used because someone's likeness is being used along the way. And we'll also kind of, hopefully this discussion helps anybody understand why WGA and SAG are not signing an agreement that doesn't have AI protections in. It's not like a whiny baby thing. Like, this is important stuff to protect us now, because as you know, AI is moving fast. Mark, how are you using AI?
Well, thank you for having me. Yes, I have an agency called SageWorks that focuses on content and experiential for brands. So being a producer of advertising for the last 20 years, thinking about emerging tech and emerging media in a way that would enhance that process for the last 10 years at least has been top of mind for me. I'm only happy now that the conversation is broad enough that we can talk about these tools in a way that more people will now understand, which is terrific, especially as you said, it's going so quickly. So my agency, we work with brands to, again, meet budgets, meet accelerated timelines, meet diminished budgets. The truth is digital, everyone by now has produced, shot, cut, even edited something themselves. So they do think that it doesn't require a lot of effort and experience. We work with people of all levels, high and low, and often, which I'm excited to share today a little bit, if the conversation goes in that direction, we're enabling creators to do the work themselves. So not necessarily to be dependent on an agency to define this stuff. That's the best part about all of this, is that it's accessible, not just available, but a lot of this, if it's not, code on GitHub that you've got to create an instance and you need to understand code, that's one thing. But there's a lot of tools that you can start today and just create a profile, maybe even free. A lot of them are free, and create some amazing stuff on yourself without knowing anything about code, without being a prompt engineer or whatever you might read about. It's very unintimidating, actually, because of the power of the AI. It's simplifying a lot of the hard stuff that it's doing for us to just hit buttons and, or textually prompt something. So yeah.
That's why I feel like it's so important for indie filmmakers to be on top of this tech, because it's really going to change the game for them. Jason is an independent filmmaker. He has been recently playing with anything and everything that comes out. Jay, what are you finding about the AI as far as like where we currently are and where the level of it needs to go still for independent filmmakers?
Yeah, well, I work with AI in the editing process, actually editing. I use it to help me speed up the editing workflow, but I also use it for the visual aspects of it as well. And yeah, I've been working with AI probably since last summer, and I've seen a growth in it. Like it's like almost every month there's a new release that is just pushing it. I remember doing some mid-journey artwork about a year ago, and when you prompt it for something, it doesn't always give you what you want. It doesn't always look exactly like a real photo or whatever. But that was like a year ago. Now, I mean, as I've been working with you, Jen, on promoting our film that we're working on, I've been able to create some very realistic characters that actually look like the actors that we chose. For instance, now I was able to take, we had headshots of the actors in costumes, bring that into AI, and tell Midjourney, using our actors, our characters, can you create and then explain what you need? And I find I'm using it a lot now for pitch decks to promote, like, this is the idea of the film. I don't think it's necessarily at the level where you can create a film that looks like a Pixar movie right now, but it's going to happen. But you can definitely use it to pitch your ideas for a Pixar movie that you wouldn't been able to do a little while ago.
So Evan, when you're your company, you said you're actually creating skins and stuff. So are you bringing in actors? How is that working? Because I know you guys do it ethically, legally, all that stuff.
Yeah, so essentially what we do is, so there's volumetric capture stages. There's several different companies, hundreds of them around the world. You bring them into a stage like Microsoft or 40 views or something like that. And you bring them in, we capture them. And for us, we kind of focus on three main verticals really, which is like digital crowd creation, stunts, and digital fashion. So for digital fashion, we just finished the digital fashion kind of preview for a product we're coming out called Outfit. Essentially, we have this tool that you take volumetric video and it turns it into a traditional 3D animation asset. And
is
so
the video that I have from you, is that what you're talking about?
Yeah. So this right here is this actor was captured. She's a model captured in a 40 view stage at CMII in Atlanta. We captured her in her undergarments, and all of that clothing is completely CG. And so what we're able to do, and all the interaction on the water you can see, that's all CG water. So what we're able to do is create a unified boundary around the real live video capture of a person and be able to apply CG simulated objects to her, as well as allow her to interact with the environment around her. So now you're taking real live people, because we're a very people-centric company. So we're all about taking real actors and capturing their true likeness, and then using all these amazing tools to bring it into traditional simulation VFX engines. So essentially you can take any data from any volumetric video data, run it through our pipeline, and it can go to any visual effects. So we're sort of like agnostic. Inputs and outputs are completely agnostic. And the tools that we leverage, it deals a lot with AI, is all about getting rid of, thousands of hours of mocap cleanup and all these like non-creative tasks. So we sort of believe that AI can get rid of thousands of hours of repetitive tasks and allow that time to be put back towards creative. So we see AI as a tool for more creativity, not to replace human creativity.
Mark, you're nodding a lot at that. Do you want to add on to that?
Yeah, I just love what you just said. I mean, it's not a replacement. It's definitely an augmentation and a time saving aspect of it too. And as Evan was just describing, I mean that's a very high end level application of AI, and you could see the results. They're stunning. I mean, Evan's fantastic. That's the best motion that I've seen on clothing. On and all fabricated with the AI, or generated, I should say. That's really terrific. And it's rare that we would utilize tools of that caliber in advertising, commercial, short form, small budget, but it needs to be at that level for a film experience and something that's, a longer arc. And you've got characters that are very immersive in a story and a space that's very immersive. So, and that's what's been sort of missing for a while, meaning like getting to photorealism, and getting to accurate motion. And then, wow, the responsiveness of the cloth and all that being CG is just remarkable. As we get even closer to real time too, that's even more exciting, because then we can, modify things that we're watching in real time, like a live broadcast, and applying those. And maybe you have some of that happening now, Evan. I don't know.
We do. Our whole ethos is that we start at the top, because you'll never kind of, if you start at the top, you'll get to somewhere where real time can happen. But if you start at the bottom, you're always sort of making excuses for why it's not there yet. And I think with technology, every time we do something, we learn so much. And we are essentially trying to be that. We're building a software-enabled service platform. So we're hoping that artists can just take, assets. They can either purchase assets, they can, whatever they can do it on their own. We're not about like only high end. We're really trying to democratize this, but just really kind of be a platform for folks to be able to even be able to be able to license their own likeness. Because I think that's really the future that we're getting at is really about asset management, tracking and licensing, and being able to license your own data to an AI, library or something of the sorts.
And, if I could jump back in, sorry, that was the reason I think you mentioned SAG-AFTRA, the WGA. I mean, that hits right at the core. That's why this is so timely, so prescient. We won't be able to get that back. I was listening to a story on NPR yesterday about some background extras or background actors, and how they were already being asked prior to the strike to, while you're sitting around waiting for your scene to happen and you're in costume, go into this trailer and let us scan you head to toe, photogrammetry, in real time, all angles. Can you smile? Can you laugh? Can you cry? Raise your hands, do this. And then they've got this model that they can use again for background, extension of scene extension and augmenting crowds. And that is, as a producer and as someone, again, as I mentioned, I look for these like economy of scale tools that I can use, mainly because I'm working in a smaller budget environment, but independent film is the same thing. But the point is, once you give those scans away, you don't have them anymore. I mean, you can go and license it again, but somebody's got your 3D model, and who knows where that's going to show up. So it's paramount that
anybody see the first Black Mirror of this last season?
Yeah.
We laugh at it like ha ha ha, and then we start talking, oh crap, that is real. And actors, background actors, do never walk in a trailer and say yes. They need to talk to your agent. They need to pay you. I don't care if you get fired. Do not give your likeness away. So let's talk about some of the programs that you guys are using that R&D filmmakers can use right now. Let's start with video stuff. Like Jason, you mentioned you use AI to help speed up editing. When you say that, what do you mean?
I guess I'm giving away a secret.
Do we lose your
audio?
We lost your audio, Jay.
Come back.
No, maybe restart and rejoin us. So in the meantime, while he restarts,
It's live. Here you go. That's how you know we're not AI characters right here on the spot.
Mark, as a as a producer, what are you using? What programs are you guys using for making video stuff?
Yeah, well, there's a lot of wonderful tools out there, and they're often disconnected. So we might use one tool for one specific thing, and then bring that piece of content, whether it's a still that then we now are happy with from Midjourney or from Dolly, and then we'll bring that into another tool to expand it, to either animate it. One of my favorite tools is Runway, and that's a suite of tools actually. Runway ML, I think, is the website. And they've got a second generation video tool, which isn't amazing, but you can start, well, video one generative tool where you could go text to video. You could create, describe a scene, and then it'll show you a video. A very short one, very inaccurate one. Gen 2 that just released in the last month or so, or maybe a couple of months, is a lot more interesting and accurate. You can get 4 to 5 second clips out of it, string those together. So you can start in ChatGPT, ask it for, ideas, create a narrative, create characters, create bits and pieces. Again, using it as a co-pilot for your creativity. You've got a story you want to articulate. You can feed it in and then ask it to help you prompt Midjourney or help you get more, specificity around that. Bring it into Midjourney, create that image. And I know we're running over a bunch of tools here, and there's a lot but you can look up on YouTube and watch someone much more succinct than me explain how to do Midjourney and how to get yourself started in Discord, et cetera. But stringing these together is what we do. So again, ChatGPT to then Midjourney to now take it to Runway, create some video, string those together. And then there are lots of AI tools. I could go on, but creating music for you on the spot. The best, though, is Adobe Premiere. And I think everybody's got that. At this point, you could sign up for the beta tool and get access to all of Adobe's beta programs, which gives you the Photoshop generative AI plugins. I guess that's what, so you can literally in an image, draw a square around the top of a mountain and then type in add a lighthouse. That's, I think, one of their examples. And
Wow.
then it gives you 3 or 4 options. You can select, nope, don't like that one. That's the one. And it blends it in. It puts it into perspective. It's amazing. Premiere Pro, of course, is video. So it's stills over time. Now you're talking about animating. And so you would use the same kind of function in After Effects, where it's relying on the generative. It creates an image, puts the object in the image, and then Adobe After Effects kind of tracks it and expands it. So it's amazing to do that in a tool that we're already so familiar with. That's the best part about AI. It's everyone's working in. Evernote has AI now, and it cleans up your notes, right? So having Premiere or whatever suite you are subscribed to, DaVinci, if it's that for color, and also now editing, then there's AI tools that are plugging in, to that as well. So it applies no matter what kind of garden of software you may be subscribed to or your company may be subscribed to.
Jason, you use Premiere. Is that what you were going to mention when you said that helps speed up your editing?
Yeah. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Well, yeah, I do use Premiere. For instance, I used it the other day along with ChatGPT. For instance, I was editing a testimony, a talking head interview where we sat with someone, and it was 30 minutes of footage of this person talking, and we asked them questions, and then we had to edit that down to about 2 minutes. So how do you take a 30-minute person talking, create a story, not have him repeating himself and all that stuff. So what I do is I took the video, the 30 minutes, create a transcript of it digitally so that I have it all in text. And then I copy that, paste that into ChatGPT, tell it, hey, take this guy's talking, make it 2 minutes long, and create a story. And what it does is it edits it in 10 seconds. And it doesn't always, it's sometimes you got to make sure that it knows to only use the words they're using. You don't want them to change what he's saying. But even if it does, it's giving me a framework. I can now see, okay, now instead of all this footage, I got this much.
So then you then have to go in and edit that based on the new script?
Yeah. Then I go into Premiere, and for this case, it wouldn't do it for me. I would go into Premiere, but at least I have a 2-minute script, and I can go in and find the footage that they chose and edit it based on that. And I
feel like it's not far behind that you're gonna have the help of like, it's going to edit that down for you.
Well,
Which,
it does actually. I mean, in a different
Mhm.
way. And I wanted to give Jason props for a great use of ChatGPT to create the narrative that's 2 minutes long. That's the hardest part, honestly, for the editor is how do we compress this information, choose the right beats. But what you can do is similar, but a different approach, right? Is you take that video, it's in Premiere. Premiere automatically generates now in the beta AI plugin version of Premiere Beta, it's called. And you can download it. It's free if you have Premiere. It will transcribe the video for you. So take that 30-minute webinar, it transcribes it for you. Now you can kind of paper edit, delete words. It'll delete that. You can delete a whole paragraph. It'll delete that whole clip out of the video. So it's making the edits for on your timeline as you are just copy editing the story on the left in a Word, Word document kind of, and it's time coded. You click on that sentence, it jumps you right to that spot in the playhead. So while I love Jason's approach of getting that framework or even having the literal words that it can match up to and then make those cuts, I like that approach too. But this is another one that's at the ready. And if you don't have Premiere, by the way, there's a tool called, I think it's Pictory, that does this similarly for free, right? It's free right now, but you can upload, it'll transcribe, and then you paper edit, so to speak, with you just delete, and then you get the clips. I mean, it's amazing. That's a big time saving for somebody who's doing a lot of work. That plus Jason's tip on how to approach it.
And I agree with Mark. I also am aware of the text to edit, which has been kind of new lately. I would love to be able to take the ChatGPT, what they spit out, and just copy paste it in there, and it does all the edits. It's not quite there yet. But what I like about ChatGPT is it's like a person when you can kind of coach it along and tell it what to do. So for instance, if I have a 30-minute video and my producer is saying, yeah, but we really like the part where he talks about this. This is important to our business. The other stuff is good, but we need him to stress that. You could tell ChatGPT also focus on what you want, what part of the story you want him to talk about, and then it'll still do it, but it'll make sure that it's not going to edit that part out. It's going to focus on that stuff. So it's a time saver for sure. I mean, you could spend hours, days trying to create a story from a 30-minute thing.
Yeah.
I want to bring up this. This is an important question that Scott is bringing up, and I think Evan, you might be able to answer this because you are really dealing with a lot of this. But what will prevent tech companies from later filing lawsuits that they did half the creative work, so they want half of what we were paid? He says, "Who owns the elephant in the room?" You guys have thoughts on that?
So this is a big hot button issue about rights ownership, tech companies licensing things that they don't own the data for. And there's some big lawsuits going on that we don't have to comment on right now. I think that's really going to be where I think it shakes out is in the courts. I think the courts are going to have to decide how it's decided. And I think our job is really how do we track it, right? It's more important to track the data than to be like, we're not about, telling an actor that you should charge X dollars for every time your likeness is used. But we're trying to be the company to help them say, well, this is when it was used and this is why it was used, and that the studio should buy in too, so they can avoid, any lawsuits back and forth between agencies or unions. And so the deal for us is it's like, it doesn't matter. We don't want to get involved in the money side of it. We just want to get involved in how we create tools to help people. And I think the truth matter is that you can't take a picture of me and then put me on the side of a building without my permission or paying me. And I think that's the same thing of data. And so the question really comes down to how do you track the data? And I think that's going to be the big question for the next decade is how do we track our data? We already deal with that right now with our personal data online with social media and things like that being sold to advertisers. And so this is sort of a continuation of that larger idea.
As a proponent of Web3 engagements, consumer engagements, customer, visitor, viewers that are wrapped around a project, building a community as you're building a product at the same time, And again, my advertising agency, SageWorks, we work with some game studios to bring those tools to the market, or these games to market. And as I also mentioned, advertising being my background and emerging media being something that I focused on before AI really was even that clear to me. I mean, we understood what large models could do, but I had no idea we would have this chat interface experience in this term. But back then, blockchain was really what I was most excited about. And what we found when we applied it to licensing inside an agency or a holding company environment where you've got multiple clients licensing multiple songs. I'll talk about music specifically, but it's the same idea, I think, eventually with identity and likeness. But the old way of tracking songs was literally listening to the airwaves and tracking down what songs were played, and then reporting that back to the guild, and then the guild would then issue out residuals and royalty checks to those. And so that's a very manual process, but blockchain can be embedded in the object itself, meaning in the digital object, the digital song, digital image, as we now know about NFTs, et cetera, where it's a singular, signature that we now know when it shows up on the internet, meaning it's played anywhere or it's viewed anywhere, in theory, that we'd have the ability to track that and track what engagements happened with that, signature embedded inside the image or inside the song. We saved our company a lot of money. In fact, went back to one of our clients and gave them the residuals that weren't being tracked back to them because they weren't in that business. They were making commercials, not licensing songs. But anyway, the business is so large. That's millions of dollars. Now that was blockchain 5 years ago, before NFTs were so now I think we have this challenge as Evan was just describing, and as we're talking about likenesses and how are we going to track it? I mean, this is where I get really excited about Web3 from 6 months, a year ago. That's now like taboo to talk about. AI is the thing. AI needs Web3. AI needs blockchain in order to protect the individual, protect the ownership, and track it as it's being pushed out into the world, as it's being turned into new objects, new images, new songs. This is a fascinating field because it's exponentially impacting us in every business, not just the ones that we're talking about. So all that to say, now when I license photos, when I license songs, I think about those individual creators and what they put into that song or that image. And now this is the fee that I'm paying to be able to use it temporarily or however long, et cetera. We should be able to apply that to everything that we're doing. And it should be tracked so that not only the companies get their dollars back that they invested to license, but the artists who made that stuff, maybe the image, the likeness that's in the image itself gets remunerated, gets a small royalty that, again, at magnitude, at scale, can be tremendous. I mean, that again, that's why SAG, AFTRA, WGA, frankly, all the unions are probably, if this doesn't get solved soon, I'm sure as contracts are coming up, they're going to join as well in some fashion, because this is a monumental time for us to maybe not get blockchain embedded like I was just describing. That's where we should probably go. That's a party of one saying that. What do I know? But definitely, like Evan said, tracking and being fair and getting that stuff back. If I could squeeze in a tiny one more thing, Adobe Beta, what they've said their generative tool is designed on, it's been trained on their own stock data. So they're one of the only companies I know, and this is important for advertisers, or if you want to make sure you know what that image is coming from, they make a disclaimer: rest assured that anything you generate from us has been trained on our own data that we own, images that they've owned and licensed, et cetera. So they can be sure that you won't be sued, or they won't, you're not liable for what's potentially created by this AI that they provide you. And they make that claim. I've seen it in type. I can't remember exactly where, but it's on a website and you can go see it. Like, it's real. And that's very important for brands who don't know what the AI is going to generate. And they're afraid that, what if it is copywritten, and, now we're liable by extension, and that's risky. So they tend not to want to do it, So as an agency representing brands, we have to know where the licensing attributes to, so we can protect them and ourselves. And filmmakers, we need to do the same thing as filmmakers too. So Yeah, lots of good stuff. Thank you for my
I have a very basic question for you guys. As someone who is currently in the middle of purchasing a green screen studio, is green screen dead? Do we even need it anymore?
Not dead. Not dead.
Mm-hmm.
You guys go first, though. I'll tell you my thoughts. I've spoken too much.
I mean, Evan, how are you guys? You guys are going to big volumes for your stuff.
Yeah, we use our studios have. There's different studios. Some have green 360. Some don't need it because they use depth sensors. Look, green screen's just a tool, right? Volumetric video is a tool. High speed, Phantom is a tool. You're not going to shoot a Phantom for a TikTok video, or maybe you will. And that's pretty cool if you can do that. But green screen's a tool. Will there be depth map removals without green screen? Lytro camera style thing in the future? Of course it will be. Will it be perfect? Will it be like your phone where it picks up the guitar behind you sometimes? Yeah. Like with all new technology, it's not exactly perfect. Sometimes it gets to a point where it takes something away, but generally speaking, especially at large scales, you're going to be using green screen, especially on location. If you're just wanting to mask out things, it's just easier to throw a green screen up. It is one of the cheapest pieces of gear to rent and kind of figure things out later, which is, I think, the problem with it. But if you use it correctly, it's a tool, and all tools should be used.
Great. As we wrap up our time, those of you watching, reminder that you get your questions in now before it's too late.
May I ask a question to some of the other guys?
Please.
Oh yeah. Well, I like what Mark was saying. What you were saying about the using, about how we need to protect people from being their likenesses being reused. And it got me thinking, what do you think about the whole public domain, fair use stuff when, for instance, as movies or stories age, they become the public domain and anybody can use them? For instance, like Winnie the Pooh was just made into public domain. Anybody can make a Winnie the Pooh movie. You can't necessarily make stuff that maybe Disney themselves added to their own Winnie the Pooh because that happened later. But the original story of Winnie the Pooh is now anybody could do it. The same with Batman, the same with the. So as we are actors and scanned in and we're in movies, after 60 years, 80 years from now, we might all be dead by then. But I don't see why people can't say, well, now this movie, these characters, these people, these characters are public domain. They're free to use. So I could see all of us being used in the future. We're not going to get compensated. Our estate's not going to get compensated. I don't know. Does that make any sense? What I'm
Yes. So like we could license our image and our likeness for now for 50 years, 100 years, whatever the public domain rule would be, I suppose. Right. And that's what you're saying. Like, how do we feel once we get released into the public and it's no longer licensable? Now is that what your question is?
The question was also to a caller or whatever, a viewer that asked the question about. I think eventually, I think there's no way to stop being people using our likeness. It's just gonna happen.
I think you got to get ahead of it. Like, it's certainly a big part of sports now. For example, college kids are making money, not just appearance in the game, but their lawyers or agents are now putting forth these license and likeness images, certainly so they can do photographs on, the cover of Sports Illustrated or a Gatorade ad. But it's getting to the point where we can use a 3D model. I mean, anybody who's played, NBA, 2K, NBA, like, it's pretty damn good. Like, it's not amazing there, but already the AI generative bots and humans like Evan was talking about earlier that they do, I'm sure, are extraordinary. So realistic. So you can take that sports athletic image and actually act out a whole commercial without even having the actor there. If you had his body, his likeness in a digital sense, right? So they're licensing it early. That's why, again, the Actors Guild, all of the filmmaking and content creative guilds need to get hip to this, because this should be something that's part and parcel of all the agreements now. Not just, hey, you're not just making this 30-second spot with me. I understand you're scanning me. how is that going to get used? Where is it going to get used? And here's how, if it does get used, I get remunerated, so that you can't just make a movie with Brad Pitt without Brad Pitt, and maybe in 100 years when those licenses expire, I don't know, does that apply? Meaning like,
I think it's a, oh,
what?
sorry.
For public
No,
domain.
yeah, exactly. I just think it's two sides of the same coin. Because, like, on the one hand, you have like the 18-year-old kid that comes out and does incredible sports athletic, feat that only he can do, and he can now license that motion to a video game, and now his, whatever character, doesn't even have to be him, but his performance is now being
Right.
licensed, and then maybe he becomes famous and he can go and relicense that because he owns that.
Yeah.
And so that's one side of the coin. The other side of the coin is, and then one day he grows old and someone can turn that into whatever they want. And that's where it gets really dangerous is you start
I
saying,
think it's dangerous from the
where
beginning
does it
because
end?
it's a really scary thought. And I know, like, my husband is an actor. That's his whole bread and butter. To think that someone could take his image and just do whatever they want with it. I don't even like the idea of licensing your image, because I license my image to Pepsi. And it's like, well, you think, well, Pepsi is trustworthy. They'll do whatever they want. Like, it won't be anything bad. I won't look bad. You don't know that, first of all. Secondly, I think there has to be a way to license it to the individual, not to an agency, if that makes sense. Where it's like, you don't own my likeness. You're just borrowing it for this one thing we've agreed upon. You can't just use it indefinitely, however you want. We don't, obviously, we're on this call. None of us have control over what the contracts happen and what it says, but I know there's a lot of fear right now, and actors are some of the most scared. Like, they literally feel like they're going to be replaced in 10 years. And I'm like, look, you're going to have to really convince me that I'm ever going to watch a movie and believe that AI character has the same human emotion as a real character, because I barely can sit through animation.
Right.
So I don't think they'll be replaced. Writers, I could definitely see why they're scared, because ChatGPT is one hell of a writer. It's scary, even though it's plagiarizing everything. And directors didn't even put anything. The DJ didn't even put any AI protections in that I know of. Like, where does that go? What happens? How do you see? Are directors replaceable with this? Like, some like you said, some kid in his computer just puts the movie together using AI. Like, how does it work? Where do we go? I guess my whole thing is like, how do we help the people who are really scared right now feel better? Feel like, look, you're going to be okay, and here's why. Do you guys have anything like that to share?
I do think that it's not there. Like, I think there's this, and we should be scared. Like, we need to build real guardrails here, because, like, by the time the next contract comes around, it's gonna be a very different world, right? But right now, everything that's generative video is very short clips, and like it can't be super complex, and there's a lot of kind of like limitations to
Until
it now.
next month.
And it's been a lot of hype, and I think that the real studios are not really using it yet. They're all kind of trying it out and testing it out, but it's a big change for them to change their entire, technical pipelines to do all this anyway. The VFX companies are like playing with it, but are kind of afraid because they don't want to change what they already know. But at the same time, we do need to be cautious of this, because even you guys right here, like, I would love the conversation you talk about editing, because it did seem like it got to your assembly much faster, and then you can kind of work from there, as opposed to just like that 1 to 2 days of just like lining things up and slogging through it.
Well, you make a great point. I mean, and I think that's an opportunity. This is an opportunity for the independents, the independent agents, creators, content shops like we have, the independent filmmakers, because the high-end shops and the big brands, again, for the reasons we've mentioned, either they're nervous about what could come of it, or it's in that gray zone. That's an opportunity for any creator who wants to express themselves and to take advantage of these tools that are available right now. In fact, I think that, and they're free at first. They're not always free, and they won't always be free. So take advantage of it now. That's what I would say right now as a point of encouragement. And then to support that, I would say, creativity will always win out. And that's why the human, provided that we're not talking about the AI taking over nuclear arms right now. We're talking about the creative space and being replaced in films.
Oh, great. Let's put the scarier thing on the table. And
I know. Let's put.
Mark.
But that's what they're talking about when they say the sky is falling because of AI, and that's why those people, even the OpenAI ChatGPT creators supposedly signed this, bill, not a bill, but a letter that said we need regulations, because they're talking about that picture, not, how do we keep from, because a good actor is going to get seen, there'll be less roles for sure. There'll be less opportunity for background actors to be one of 150 actors on a scene where they're this big in the background. Anyway, not diminishing that. I'm just saying, like, that's an easy application for crowd scene extension. That's been happening for years in commercials and films. So that's not new, and that's not because of it is AI, but that's because AI has been around for a little while. But what's expedient is we're now realizing we can apply those things to a lot of different things, and the creators who take advantage of this. And I'm mixing some different applications together to make this one point. Like, if you take advantage of it, we'll find the right way to, before we get blocked out of the game, which is why I didn't sign that letter about slow down AI, because it's BS to think that anyone, including Elon Musk, will pause while we come up with regulations. We need to come up with regulations and guidelines, period. And the world is not going to wait for that. It just won't. China's going to go, this country's going to go, that country's going to go forward. And then who's going to be left behind? No one's going to pause. That's just how I personally feel. It's the wrong way to approach it from a place of fear. You approach it by embracing it, understanding it, writing the regulation. I actually do write a lot of contracts for influencers, for people, because I'm that middle person in an advertising content flow. We have that opportunity to write that my language that my attorneys haven't seen yet, because I'm at the front line. They're looking at me saying, hey, what's appropriate here? Because we don't really understand how this gets applied. I do, because my hands are in it. And two, I can at least now bridge to, here's a possible solution. Here's how we can protect ourselves. Here's how we're protecting the people we're hiring. This kind of conversation, like, kudos to you for bringing this up. It's so much more fun to talk about all the tools, but this is the heart of this right here, and it's now. It's not in 2 years, because the world will not pause. The studios will not pause. They're not pausing. Even right now, while they're not supposed to be working, they're not pausing, so it's now. People need to realize that and support the actors and support the directors right now, because they're on their it's like the first battlefield, right? But it's going to hit across every industry in some way or shape, where that productivity gains are going to be wanted to be realized and expanded and scaled by the top. And that's going to affect a lot of us who are, quote unquote, on the ground, let's say, working bottom up. We're the workers. So we've got to get in this, understand it, and support those who are creating ways to mitigate it, like the actors and the directors and the producers.
Yeah.
Sorry for the rants. It's a big.
No, it's very well put. I think that was really great. I'll probably put that soundbite up on TikTok. Scott really wants us to touch on this before we leave. He keeps putting it. So Scott, we're going to touch on this. So when he says, he basically wants to know, so you have these tech companies where they're letting us use all this stuff. Adobe's like, it's all yours. You can use whatever's in our thing. Then later they go, well, 70% of those decisions were our AI. He's worried that means that they can come after his revenue. Is there protections in place for creators? I mean, like, I've played around with AI, not as much as like Jason. Like, Jason, all the time you do the tech, when you're playing with all these new things, do they ever go, here, you own what you make? Is there anything that you ever checked box, or are you checking the box that says we have the rights to use anything you've made? Like,
well, when you sign up for the actual, use to the software, it's all pretty much speculated in the not speculated. It's all put into the terms of agreement, and pretty much right now there is I don't see any type of like royalties or any type of legal protections for any of these images. I mean, they're all free to use, for us to use whatever, any way we want, even commercially. Now they do make some money if you pay for a plan. like $10 a month, $20 a month. So that those AI generators are making money. Now, what they're doing with the money that I pay them every month, I don't think they're spreading it out to
Where
random.
they've gotten all their,
They're buying NVIDIA chips so they can expand their business. Yeah.
So is it then like, if as a filmmaker, if I go, it's one thing if we're using it for like what Jason and I've been working on, which is like a pitch deck. That's one thing, because who cares? We're not making money off that. But say we go use some of these images in our film, can they come back and say we want a percent of the profits of that film because you used what you made with our software? Are there protections for us? And maybe this is an entertainment lawyer question, and possibly they don't even know the answers yet because it's all kind of new.
I mean, I'm sure.
I don't think anyone knows the answers. Yeah, I don't think anyone knows the answers. But I mean, I think the first question is really like, you know, at what point it's like a typewriter is slower than a computer. And so, you know, if you were typing a paper and then you messed up, you have to start back over. The truth is like the AI is another piece of technology that makes us work faster. So from like the artist perspective, like this is a tool that artists should be able to use to work faster and spend more time being creative versus starting over and doing it again. And at the end of the day, the question though that you're asking is generative, meaning using an image or a voice or maybe language that was written by somebody else in a commercial piece that makes someone money. Does that money have to flow back to the AI licensor in order to pay the licensee? That's the question. And I think we would love to all kind of know where that's going to go.
I'm a graphic designer. I'm a motion designer. I use a lot of stock images from like iStock, and you sign up for plans and you pay the fee, and that gives you the rights. I don't see how, unless it's specified in the terms of agreement, how they could come back and say, well, you used our stuff, so you made this much money as a profit on your film. We want a percentage. I don't see how legally they can get away with that now.
Yeah, one aspect is how can they prove that it's their image? That's the first thing. Like,
right?
Does it track, and for how long does that stay around? What image was generated? And it will vary. The answer to that, no doubt, varies from platform to platform. Like Runway, I mentioned, may or may not. Adobe, they have their own claims about how they trained and where these images are being generated off of and from, but they don't talk about, well, yeah, those are commercially available to use because that's their whole business. So I would imagine that one is fair, but then who knows? You're absolutely right. In fact, I'm going to my entertainment attorney and I'm going to find out, at least the platforms that I'm using. We're making a short film now that we want to, just as an experiment, but it's quite good, I think. And we want to turn it into a feature if we can, again, as an experiment, but I bet it'll come out pretty damn good. So do we have to pay somebody later? That's a great question.
Well, it's funny. We have, I think next Thursday, if I'm not mistaken, we have the Ask a Lawyer where everybody can come and ask questions. I'm literally going to add that, and I'm going to ask Chris on air, like, about this and see what he comes back with. Maybe I'll give him some warning so he can go do some research on it beforehand. Yeah. It is new.
I do know there are, real quick about the whole license thing. I do know that there are commercial license, because we license commercial license, and then there are educational licenses. So if you're not making money on your project, you can use MIT's data set licenses. There's a bunch of learning data sets out there that anyone can use. You have to look at where they come from, and for sure, if it's a commercial license, just like Jason said, like Adobe stock or anything like that, you look at the terms. It says for personal projects, for commercial projects, for feature films, there's usually different prices based on what you purchase. And I think that's essentially going to be the model. I think.
And it's also really iffy because we've had a panel with a music supervisor who does big stuff. And she was like, do not use those libraries for music, because even though it says you can use for commercial stuff, that is not necessarily true. And you could get in a lot of trouble. So you got to really do your due diligence, I guess.
Yeah, that's true, because they layer. One library will buy another library and so forth, and they may not actually have any longer the license to that original source, but they're giving you perpetuity because that's their business model. You don't just read the boilerplate that they post, although we do photocopy that and put it in our documentation, because even that will change. Like you'll come back a year later and a whole section that used to be there is gone. They have that, prerogative to update. So she's right, or he's right, your music supervisor. I mean, look, everything has some risk, or a lot of risk, or a little risk. And you learn that as you work with attorneys. They're really there to tell you how much and to kind of quantify that, because if you didn't take any chances, you just wouldn't move, And if we are in this creator space, now again, I told you at the top, I'm the optimist here. I'm thinking about embracing all these tools for my own benefit, for my clients' benefit. That's what I do. But it's super important, as you heard me say too, to protect all of this. But you got to get in there because it's going so fast, and you don't have to do it all. You don't have to learn pick one application, jump into Premiere and plug in the beta, or go to some of the, or check out Evan's tool and his services, and, but go for something to get your feet wet. You get a taste, you get an understanding, and then these other questions will be easier to approach than just net new, entirely whole, because it's scary otherwise.
Yeah, I think there could be issues definitely if you're making stuff, even if they say it's great for commercial use, but if you're going to put a celebrity, for instance, in it, like I know Mid-Journey, I talked earlier about how advanced it has gotten in a year. Now you could pick a celebrity, Paul Rudd or whatever, and say, Paul Rudd eating a pizza, wearing a spaceman costume, whatever. And it will just make them. And there he is. And can I use that commercially because it has Paul Rudd in it? I don't know. But then you could take that image and, like you said, bring it into Runway and say, okay, now convert this to a video. Well, Runway's not necessarily making the original Paul Rudd Rudd picture, but they are taking that picture and converting it into a video. So, what happens?
Fellow Producers Guild member Summer says, you have to believe that just as hard as actors and creators are working to be paid, the other side is lawyers working to quail our forward motion. And this is hilarious. Facebook users, you must be from the Working Director group, and it's not telling us who you are. Who is this? But I'm hoping to see an AI studio executive tool in the near future so we can anticipate studio notes. That is, I laugh at it, but it's actually really, I mean, if you could put, here's my script in ChatGPT and go, what notes is this dick going to give me?
It will do that. It will do that.
I've heard some funny comments that ChatGPT wasn't so much going to replace the worker, but actually the CEO for decision making and slow decision making. Like GPT's quick, man. It can think of the matrix while it's deciding too. So everyone has.
Here's a ChatGPT tip.
Member David Shatnoff asking that.
I'll give you a ChatGPT tip. It's not just from me. It's from other bloggers that I've read. If you tell ChatGPT what it is before you ask the question, it helps. So for instance, you could say, you are a music executive, you are a film executive, you are a resume writer, you are a professional video editor. That.
That's great too.
Yeah, role
do
playing.
Do this. And it will think differently. It will think like that person. You could say, you are my mother. How would you answer this question? And then it would answer it like your mom. So you tell it what you want, who you want it to be, and then say, ask me a question. I have a movie, paste in the script. You are a studio executive. Ask me questions as a studio executive based on this script.
That's an amazing way to use it. And directors who are watching this, your meetings, before you go to your meetings, what a great way to prep.
And then you could answer the question and it will say, that's a good answer or not so great or whatever. And it'll tell you. And then you could even then ask it, well, how would you make my answer? How would you answer it? How should I have answered it better? And it will give you, based on kind of what you said, but a better way to present yourself.
Also, that's a quick side note, studio executives who might be watching this, I would never do that, just to be clear. And tell you about it. John Christopher, I think this is another question, an add-on question for our Ask a Lawyer segment next week. So I'm going to add it to my list. I just want to acknowledge that he says, what happens when the company's planner AI and such goes out of business? That's a really good question. And I'm going to ask that to Chris. So tune into our Ask a Lawyer next week. But this one is interesting. How much can we stretch rights if using AI to simulate desired casting in your sizzle reel? I think it goes back to what we're talking about, where really there's such a fine line, but like you're making a sizzle reel, you're not really using it to get paid for anything. Like, would you guys use whatever generated cast you can get, the Paul Rudds for that?
I mean, it depends. Like if I'm an actor and it's my sizzle reel, no. But if I'm a director, sure. I mean, it doesn't matter that I don't think that it was live or real or simulated if it's your direction. And in that case, that you could make that argument, I guess.
That's actually a really interesting point you just made too, for directors who are watching and listening, that if you want to show, like you need to show the technology, you want to show that you're ahead of the tools, which we're going to do an in-camera effects virtual production thing, I think in next week or the week after, where we're going to talk more about this. But I mean, you need to be able to show that you can use the technology. Half the reason I'm doing a kid space adventure movie is to go, yes, I know how to use the tools at our disposal, VFX wise. And so maybe I need to do some kind of AI generated thing to say, I also understand how to use this, because we have to stay ahead of the tech.
I can tell you firsthand, I'm developing studios for commercial use. Right now, you can do The Mandalorian, create a giant Cove virtual production environment, LEDs wrapped all around, but it's hundreds of millions of dollars, and it's a lot of money. We can't rent it for 6 months. We need to shoot in 6 days in a commercial, right? So, we're building spaces and with the hardware and the tools and the people to generate that. I can tell you right now, since I'm very familiar with the virtual production stages and across the states, both coasts, the middle, the ones who are utilizing AI to generate background, environments, like View Technologies, they just acquired a company that creates AI generative video, different ways of input to get to the results. It's high end, it's very CPU intensive, but it's bringing the ability for us to create environments, not just buy from a Unity marketplace, a game engine environment that looks phenomenal. Okay, let's shoot our commercial there and use that as our sort of, dynamic backplates, put the actors in front. We can now change those environments, not just custom geometry and 3D, but AI, using AI tools to generate them, and then text corrections. I want more stars, more trees, more this, and again, generative AI, creating it in this giant backgrounds, which takes a long time, but you're in real time where the actors are standing in front of the screen right now, ready to shoot. That's another acceleration in what we do. It's very exciting in the virtual production space, how AI will help offset those, what are right now very high costs. I mean, to have all those people and to take that much time to create environments before you shoot, that's really the key. It's like bringing post-production forward, that simplifies that. And so for, again, indies and commercials that have smaller budgets, these are the tools that are going to help us break through and get our careers. And then they're coming to ask us for our likenesses, and then we'll be so lucky. That's how I see it.
Mark, I totally agree. In the virtual production space, I think it's going to be a game changer, because right now the VAD departments are huge and it takes weeks to prep a job. And then suddenly the client comes in and they're like, I wish the sky was now purple. And you're like, sending it off to the team, and they're doing it, they're updating it, and these huge files taken. Everyone's sitting there kind of on their phones waiting for lunch, and then lunch comes and goes, and you see it, and they're like, you know what, to change it. And like AI is just going to be like, we got to just turn it around
right now.
And it's not currently built for, it's currently built to be free within a space you build, but adding that space and changing that space in real time is still difficult and slow.
And one more amazing thing about that moment you were just describing, where we're changing the sky or moving the sun in real time with the clients, that's a moment where the DP standing there, the director, and locations, as they sometimes still call them, but those are the engineers who are creating the environments, and the client, they're all having a creative collaborative moment, versus here's what the client said. Take 2 weeks, generate that, share it. We don't get to go to the meeting. We hear that the client likes it, but it's disproportionately kind of stretched out. Whereas like that's creativity happening as well as we're creating the moment. We're like deciding in real time together as humans around the challenge in the moment. That's a whole other way of working. And for those that have experienced that, it's awesome. It's liberating. And you'll want to go back and do it the next day instead of like, oh shit, let's go, the usual. Yeah.
Are one of you not in LA right now having thunderstorms?
I'm in Atlanta having major thunderstorms. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm like, it's funny because you're saying something, then the lightning and thunder will accent what you're saying.
Oh, wow.
Like you generated it in AI.
Yeah, I thought you were just doing this below. You're like,
yeah, you can hear it. Zoom usually knocks that down. They've got some fantastic sound suppression built in.
It's great.
StreamYard, I don't know. Yeah.
So we are definitely out of time. This has been a lot of info. You guys have really squeezed in a lot. I appreciate your time. Those of you who are watching, I encourage you to come back next Thursday. We'll ask a lawyer some of these AI questions that are still pending. And then the following week, I believe, is the in-camera effects / virtual production. We're going to talk about how you as indie filmmakers can afford to do some of the more expensive stuff. Thank you guys so much for all of your brains on this call. And we'll see you all next time.